And with that, we are here. It is Friday, the 27th of February. And bang, we're on. We got the microphone set up. We got the I'm in the sunroom studio today. I'm trying to get more sunlight into my life. I hear it's good for your health and overall well-being. Maybe I should go with the blue glasses today. My special blue show sunglasses. Really bring out the blue in my shirt today. Let's try that. There we go. All right. It gives me a bit more of a dramatic effect. How is everybody today? A little bit of short notice, but thought we'd get into some interesting stuff. We have a very interesting planetary alignment happening tomorrow night. And for those of you with some optical equipment, might actually be a little bit visible. So we'll talk about that. We have these alignments every so often. And I think they're interesting because even though this one isn't really on a string, they're all on a certain side of the sun, and they're all more or less within certain degrees of each other. Jupiter's probably the outlier, but Jupiter's still in the alignment, as you'll see. And the idea with the alignment is that planets would tend to feed off one another, and the trigger effect of the energy would be theoretically much greater. Now, what's interesting are the planets that are outside of the alignment, and that would include Pluto and Mars, both of which have a relationship with each other, Mars being the original ruler of Scorpio and Pluto being the current ruler of Scorpio. So Scorpio is kind of off the table a little bit during this alignment. So we'll look at the alignment. We'll get into it. Also, there are things happening on the world stage. And I don't know if you have seen Netanyahu's meeting with Modi, but it's a lot more important than just two guys getting together and having a Freemasonic handshake with one another. I'm going to get into a little bit of that today and some of the push me, pull you of the let's go to war with Iran optics, which are now taking place. So apparently Marco Rubio is back in Israel. That's the story. And it comes from the United States government itself, which, by the way, I don't know if it changed, but all of a sudden, access to the Epstein files for the public has been shut down. So there you go. Secretary Rubio's travel to Israel. Secretary of State Marco Rubio will travel to Israel from March 2nd to 3rd. The secretary will discuss a range of regional priorities, including Iran, Lebanon, and ongoing efforts to implement President Trump's 20-point peace plan for Gaza. Now, do you really think that Bibi Netanyahu has any investment in a 20-point peace plan for Gaza? He might have an investment in 10 points of it, maybe 15, but all 20, I seriously doubt it. So we're going to get into some of the beating of the war drums, which, based on the meeting with Modi and Netanyahu, doesn't seem like it's just Iran. Like, this is lining up to be a deep regional war that could be very, very problematic. So we'll take a look at that as well, and some information that was sent to me about the Modi Netanyahu meeting, which is pretty revelatory. And it doesn't take a Rhodes Scholar to fill in the blanks and see what's going on with that meeting and even the short-term possibilities of what can be unfolding. So we know Rubio is going to Israel. Commercial flights are still going into Israel. However, there has been a call for evacuation for many Americans out of Israel. Unfortunately, I don't think Mike Huckabee is one of them. Whatever you think of Tucker Carlson, he has this incredible way of completely embarrassing complete and utter moronic hypocrites. He did it with Ted Cruz, and he did it with Mike Huckabee. Mike Huckabee was boxed into a corner by Tucker Carlson. And essentially, when Tucker asked him, well, should the current state of Israel be in control and own everything from the Tigris to the Euphrates, which is a very big swath of land? And he got Huckabee to agree to that. Huckabee said, yes, I believe they should. Those were his words. Now, if you're an American diplomat to a foreign country, that's not the right answer. The right answer is, I work for the government of the United States. I'm here to tend to America's interests. And if that's what Israel thinks and is planning to do, then it does involve America's interests, and probably need to have a deeper discussion about it. That would be the level one answer. And then Tucker would probably have a follow-up, which would be, but do you agree with it? And Huckabee would say that on the surface, diplomatically, I would say, no, I don't agree with it on the surface diplomatically. And this is Israel's country. And if they believe that to be true, and that is their manifest destiny, then it opens up an entirely different can of worms. And my job becomes infinitely more complicated. And he could follow it up with, and I support Israel's right to exist and defend itself. Make no mistake about that. But in terms of borders and future borders, well, there's a whole other global community out there that would probably weigh in on that as well. Boom, done. Right? Done. But he doesn't say that. He says, yes, I believe so. So the main question around this whole thing with Tucker and Huckabee, call it Tuckerbee, is who is Huckabee really working for? Is he working for the United States government? You and I? Because theoretically, we're paying his salary, right? as a diplomat, he gets a stipend from the U.S. government. And he gets to live rent-free in the embassy. All the meals are more than likely provided to him by a kitchen staff in the embassy that works there. So he doesn't have to pay for his food. He's got breakfast, lunch, and dinner. 3 squares. He's probably got a big cabinet of, what would he eat? Mike Huckabee seems like a gummy bear guy. So he probably has plenty of gummy bears. And he also seems like a pimento cheese on cracker guy. That's what and as far as his beverage of choice, I think Mike Huckabee is Diet Coke and cream soda, but not Diet Cream. Although you never know. I think Diet Cream soda is weird. But I could see that those would be his beverages of choice. Doesn't drink. Mike Huckabee is dry as my backyard right now. So Tucker really took it to him. He's great at that. Now, if Huckabee, I think it's interesting that Marco Rubio is going there. Right? And what is he really going to talk about? Yeah, I mean, the peace plan is a good cover, but we are inching further or closer and closer to having a conflict with Iran. And I find some of the discussions really interesting. So some of the, and perhaps some of you have seen this as well, some of the scuttlebutt, as they say, that I have heard is that the United States wants Israel to attack Iran first. Well, okay, that makes sense. But if you're Iran, like, do you really want to do that? Do you really want to attack? I mean, if you're Israel, do you really want to attack Iran first? I don't think so. And the reason is because the United States could just leave them out to dry. Like, oh, sorry. Yeah, we couldn't get it together to follow up in time. So, yeah, we just thought it was in our best interest to protect as many people as possible. But the idea, right, is that Israel goes in, does an attack on Iran, Iran retaliates, and then the United States comes in and hits them with the heavy artillery and comes in to save Israel, to save the day for Israel. That's the idea. But this bullshit that the optics look better is, what do they think they're dealing with? I mean, maybe I overestimate people. Because I think that people are hip and well aware of what's going on there and could just call that out. And it was a total setup versus, oh my, the Israelis, they demonstrated such bravery. And I'm so glad we came in to come to their aid and rescue. We'll always support Israel no matter what. And there are some people, there are a lot more people out there that I think believe that than not. It's really weird. Anyway, that's the latest. They're negotiating. Well, you go first. Go on, you go. You know, it's kind of like two kids. Remember when you were kids and you're about to do something that neither kid should do, and they know they shouldn't do it, but the other one goes, you go first. You go first, and then I'll do it. No, why do I have to go first? Why don't you go first? Well, I'll tell you what, if you go first and do it, I'll do twice as much. But what if I die when I go first? You won't do any at all. Well, I know that's part of the risk, but if you go first and I do twice as much, then maybe I'm the one that dies, or maybe I'm the one that gets sick. And you get to sit there and laugh at me or mourn me or whatever happens. So that's kind of where they're at. These two kids, you go first. No, you go first. No, you go first. No, you go first. And I think Trump is probably very aware of the optics around all of it. That's my sense. He doesn't want to go first. Trump has painted himself into a weird corner, hasn't he? Because on the one hand, he has to appeal to the war hawk, sort of newly reminted neocon base that is all in favor of going to war with Iran, just like the good old days with war in Iraq and war in Afghanistan or war in Libya, right? Let's break up the band. Let's bring back the band. And there are people who see that as not only a show of solidarity for Israel, but also a show of strength for the United States. And ever since Maduro, we've been on a bit of a roll, right? We haven't even talked about the whole Mexico thing. And I think it was Sandra Jack Shaw who shot me a text. And she said, "You were all over this Mexico thing. You predicted it." And I had to think about it. And she's right. It was during an astro weather, and I was looking at the planets, and I said, "Keep your eyes out for Mexico. Something is going to go down in Mexico." And this was maybe about 2 weeks before it happened. And she had to remind me that I brought that up. And it was one of those things, because, I thought about it. I thought about it after I said it. And I said to myself, that sounded really generic. Because I go back and sometimes I listen, but I listen in my head about what I talked about. And I ask myself, well, was that a unique point of view? Has anybody else said that? Where does that land on the gravity scale? And I remember after that show, I thought, man, that Mexico thing, where did that come from? Was I just throwing that out there? Was it just a generic thing? But I saw something, and I was about 2 weeks ahead of the curve. But damn it, I was right. And I'm going to take credit for it because other people take credit for the shit they're right about. So I'm going to take credit as well. This is my new attitude for 2026 right there. That's my I'm taking credit for it attitude right there. I'm taking credit for it. Funny little critter, isn't he? It's my totem for 2026. Just got back from New Orleans. I like New Orleans. I really like it's liberal as hell, man. It's liberal as shit. But you know what happens? When you go to liberal cities, they're up to their eyeballs in art. They're really artistic places. Whether you like the art or not, that's a whole other thing. Right? Like street murals of Martin Luther King. They're artistic. I may not like them, but they're artistic. But there are other murals, like Branford Marsalis playing a trumpet in the a galaxy coming out of the trumpet, right? Shit like that. It's an artsy city. And went to the basketball game and saw one of the best halftime shows that I've ever seen at a basketball. I mean, I'm kind of a weird fan of halftime basketball entertainment because sometimes people are really talented. You see them do shit. They're like circus acts. Sometimes dogs are involved. Very talented dogs. I'm a sucker for a talented dog. But this was a band, and the band is kind of well known. They're called Cowboy Mouth. Some of you might even know Cowboy Mouth. But I thought to myself, that's really kind of a dumb name. Cowboy Mouth. What is it? Do you wake up in the morning with a case of Cowboy Mouth? What would that be like? You're out on the trail. It's dusty. You've been up all night eating beans, salt pork, drinking Jack Daniels. Maybe have a cup of coffee after dinner. You don't brush your teeth. Maybe you have a little bit of chew before you go to bed, and then you wake up. Is that Cowboy Mouth? It sounds kind of disgusting. So I thought that there could be a couple of names very similar that would be a bit more interesting than Cowboy Mouth, but close to it. Like, I think Cowboy Moth, a bit more interesting. Cowboy Moth. You could have a moth with like a 10-gallon hat, as a like a logo, and the moth could have drumsticks in one of its, hands, and it could have a guitar and a bass and a saxophone and all these instruments in its hands, right? And a 10-gallon cowboy hat, and then, kind of cool shades. Cowboy Moth. That'd be an interesting name. I think a little better than Cowboy Mouth. And then I thought, what about Cowboy Mouse? Very similar. And you could have a mouse that looks like a cowboy. Cowboy Mouse. Now, Cowboy Mouse, I could see being kind of an electronic music act. Cowboy, that feels like kind of IDM-ish, right? Or some glitch stuff. Cowboy Mouse. But Cowboy Moth, that's a good name. What do you think? Cowboy Mouth, Cowboy Moth, or Cowboy Mouse? Cowboy Mouth just doesn't do it for me. And I remember back when I was in the music business, I ran across the name Cowboy Mouth. The company I worked for had live recordings from all of these venues from all over the country. They got the licensing rights to it. And Cowboy Mouth was one of the bands. It was the first time I was introduced to the name Cowboy Mouth. Not a great name. You like Cowboy Moth. Oh, you got me with the drumsticks. Big lunar moth. I love those. That was Robert's I am Gumby, damn it moment. Thanks, Showard. If Barron Trump adds 30 pounds of muscle, imposing figure. Isn't Barron Trump like a half billionaire now? He doesn't need any muscle. Red puppy with a pillow attitude. Meanwhile, Cuba is under siege. The world is on fire. Saturn and Neptune and Aries have not disappointed, have they? I mean, come on now. All of a sudden, we got a drug war going on with the border, right? Neptune is drugs, and Saturn and Aries is always war. So we got a drug war going on. We got Cuba heating up, right? We have this thing that's, cooking like a what do they call them? What are those Moroccan ovens? There's a name for them. There's a type of cooking you do with them, right? That's what the Middle East is like. It's being cooked in one of those Moroccan ovens. So Saturn and Neptune and Aries is not disappointed. We got war all around us. Let's see. And the food in New Orleans is just off the hook. It's so good. So good. Absolutely can't figure out what's happening with Cowboy Mouth. What the heck is the topic? Just a bit of chit chat before the topic. Hi, Julie Sunshine. Tandoori oven. That's not quite what it is. but it's close. The outer planets are starting to cook. Yes, they are. Okay, so Bonnie, just to let you know, I was in New Orleans, and the halftime entertainment was a group called Cowboy Mouth. And I don't like the name. Good band, high energy. And I thought, you just change a few things up and you could have a better name. And one of the names was taking the U out of mouth and making it moth, cowboy moth. And you could have a moth with a 10-gallon hat with drumsticks and like an instrument in each hand as the band's logo. I mean, think of the merchandising possibilities. Just think of that. I mean, that alone, the shirt, a cool fucking moth, right? With Ray-Bans and a 10-gallon hat and an instrument in each moth hand with two drumsticks because the drummer is the singer. That's a great shirt. How do you illustrate cowboy mouth? I don't. Is it this mouth and like this dusty spew coming out of it? Anyway, they're a good band, and hats off to New Orleans. Very nice people, super nice people. Great food. You know, I always ask myself, could I live in this place? Whenever I go someplace, I ask myself, can I live in this place? And I thought, yeah, I could live in New Orleans. I could live there. Now, I'd have to have certain things. I'd have to live in kind of an artsy area, and I'd need covered parking for my vehicle or vehicles. But I could live there. I could live in New Orleans. I think it'd be kind of cool. It's kind of, I like places where there's a lot of visual stuff going on. Even if the visual stuff is kind of funky, even if people are like sleeping on the streets, like that's visual. It reminds you of like how good you have it sometimes. Now, do I need a steady diet of people on the streets? Probably not. That becomes depressing. A certain level brings awareness. The next level is just flat out depression. And unless you do something about it, then it's not, it's like, what do you're just stepping over the casualties of life each day. All right, let's talk about, we're going to get into this planetary alignment, but I do want to talk about what's going on with Israel and India because it's really important. Really, really important. So we know Rubio's off to Israel. And let me bring this up here. And then I'm going to bring in this text that Masaki sent me, which totally nails this. And I'll add in the quiet part out loud. So India and Israel pledge to boost ties in defense and technology. This is from 10 hours ago. Not quite a Masonic handshake. If it was a Masonic handshake, the finger would be on the knuckle, although it's pretty damn close. Because sometimes when you do a handshake, the thumb goes out. And sometimes it goes down a little further down, and it's clearly Masonic. All right, so that's Modi on the left, Netanyahu on the right. So let me just bring this up here. Prime Minister Narendra Modi has said India and Israel would deepen cooperation in defense and artificial intelligence as he concluded a 2-day visit to Israel. Modi and his Israeli counterpart, Benjamin Netanyahu, first of all, in Benjamin Netanyahu's mind, he has no counterpart. Am I right? Like, there's no counterpart to Netanyahu. It is Netanyahu and then everybody else. In a joint statement on Thursday that their countries would work towards pursuing a free trade agreement. We're going to get into that. We've taken a historic decision to elevate our time-tested partnership to a special strategic partnership, Modi said in a post on X. Well, when you get into strategy, you're getting into things like defense and surveillance and all the things that go along with it. This is a binding military agreement between these two countries. Modi's second visit to Israel since 2017 has been seen as a test of India's foreign policy as it tries to balance ties with Israel and other Middle Eastern countries, aka Pakistan. Even though Pakistan is not necessarily considered a Middle Eastern country because they're a Muslim country, they fall into that category. During the visit, Modi toured Yad Vashem, Israel's Holocaust memorial. Of course he did. Here you go. Do you want this to happen to your people? No, Sahib. Good. Then just go along with the plans and you'll be rich and famous, and we'll spare you these Holocaust memorials in the future. And addressed the Knesset, where he condemned the October 2023 Hamas-led attack on Israel. Well, that's important. We feel your pain. We share your grief. India stands with Israel firmly, with full conviction in this moment and beyond, he said. Earlier, too, India had condemned the deadly attack and expressed solidarity with Israel, while also voicing concern over civilian casualties in Gaza and reiterating its support for a two-state solution. I think that two-state solution thing is over now. I think they've moved past that. The two countries have also concluded over a dozen bilateral agreements, meaning they both agree, including on cybersecurity, trade, space exploration, education, investment, agriculture, and economic cooperation. Additionally, Israel pledged to allow another 50,000 Indian workers into the country over the next 5 years. While India would extend its landmark digital payment system, UPI, to Israel, boosting digital finance cooperation between the two countries. Okay, so let's break that down. Israel is losing people. They're losing their own population due to the fact that they're constantly at war. They are losing the Israelis are moving to Cyprus and they're moving to Greece. They're moving out. They don't want to have to deal with this idea of war. And every now and then they go back because they have the ability to, go back and forth and back and forth. But those people are leaving. Some are coming to the United States, specifically Florida, like Netanyahu's wife. So those people are leaving. Now, the Palestinians did provide an element of labor to the Israeli economy. After everything that's gone on in Gaza, that includes death by any number of means, famine, wartime casualty, disease, or even things that are not mortal, but would affect somebody's ability to be in the workplace, like the loss of a limb or 2 limbs or 3 limbs, God forbid. It has happened. Those people can no longer be counted on in the future workplace. And ultimately, if their Ben Gurion Canal peace project headed up by Jared Kushner is successful, all those people will have to leave. They'll all have to leave. Now, where do you think the 50,000 Indian workers will live? I wonder. I bet those 50,000 Indian workers will probably have new plots available to them in the Ben Gurion Canal District. Just kind of thinking outside the box a little bit. So those 50,000 Indian workers are moving there or will be moved there as a replacement program. It's not like, yeah, we're going to take 50,000 people off your hand. And what 50,000 Indians are they going to take? Coders or mid-skilled laborers? Probably a portion of the two. Let's talk about the other part. UPI is something that Israel uses. It's a form of UBI, and it's kind of a social credit score system. India has it, right? So they're like, hey, yeah, we'll hook you up. We've done all the groundwork for this. So first of all, if you want to keep our 50,000 Indian workers on UPI, well, that's going to be translatable. However, if you want to use it for your own ends and for your own people and your own society, well, we can make that scalable and you can use it. And then the idea is that they would have a fixed digital currency rate that the two countries would agree upon. And they would basically trade in that fixed digital currency, not be hampered by the rise and the fall of the shekel or the rupee. It'll be whatever it is, 1-to-1, or if it's Israel, it's probably 1.5-to-1. In the joint statement, the two leaders also unequivocally condemned terrorism and cross-border terrorism and lauded Donald Trump's peace plan for Gaza. The reason they're doing it is because it removes all the Gazans and probably sets up some interesting living situations for the 50,000 Indians that are going to be contracted to relocate to Israel. So this is Modi. I'm going to be getting into my Modi voice. India's thinking is clear. Humanity must never become a victim of conflict. The Gaza peace plan has opened a path to peace. India has fully supported these efforts. We will continue dialogue and cooperation with all countries in the future. What a very, very diplomatic way of putting things. Well, the two prime ministers have described the visit as being productive and a sign of India and Israel's growing strategic ties. Modi's visit has received some criticism at home. Jairam Ramesh, spokesperson for the main opposition Congress Party, has condemned the trip and accused the Modi government of abandoning the Palestinian cause. Despite the criticism, analysts say the visit reflects India's long-term strategic interests. Kabir Taneja, executive director of the Observer Research Foundation think tank's Middle East office, earlier told BBC that Modi's visit was largely driven by bilateral requirements, but added that regional stability in the Middle East was critically important for India's broader interests. Okay. That sounds all nice and diplomatic, doesn't it? We're just going to strengthen each other's countries because we believe in each other. We've got a caste system here and you've got a caste system there. Our futures are cast together. I'm going to read you something that Masaki sent me. And I think it's very much worth repeating here. So this was sent to Masaki by a friend of his who happens to be Indian. Now, I don't know if he is from India, but he is Indian, obviously with ties from India or with India. So here is the real story behind Netanyahu's blabber. India is being dragged into World War III, whether we like it or not. So I'm assuming he's Indian. And like other countries are also being dragged into by the central bankers. Modi lands in Israel today, and the deals being signed tell you this visit was never about diplomacy. Israel has offered India full technology transfer for Iron Dome and Iron Beam. Not a sale, a transfer, joint production, domestic manufacturing, integration into India's multi-layered air defense grid. $8.6 billion in defense agreements expected to be formalized before Modi's plane leaves Israeli airspace tomorrow. Iron Beam is the part that should stop you. A 100 kilowatt laser weapon that destroys incoming drones and rockets at $2 per shot. $2. An Iron Dome interceptor costs $50,000 to $100,000 per missile. Iron Beam makes the economics of attrition warfare irrelevant. Israel has never transferred this technology to anyone. Not the United States, not the UK, not Germany. India is the first. Now ask yourself why Israel is handing the most advanced defensive technology to the world's fifth largest economy this week of all weeks. Because Netanyahu is not selling weapons, he's buying an alliance. The hexagon he described publicly, a coalition against what he called radical Sunni and Shiite axis, requires India to have skin in the game. You do not give a country your most classified defense technology unless you need that country committed to your security architecture for decades. Iron Dome technology transfer makes India structurally dependent on Israeli defense integration. Maintenance upgrades, software updates, threat library sharing, all of it creates institutional ties that outlast any single government. So what he's saying is that once these agreements are in place, and once Israel begins the transfer of its technology, India becomes dependent upon Israel in order to maintain that level of defense and security. And that theoretically it goes beyond Modi's tenure as the leader of India. So any leader moving forward inherits the technology, the agreements, and the relationship. Think about that. This is not a transaction. It is a binding commitment disguised as a procurement. And the timing is the signature. Modi is addressing the Knesset at 4:30 p.m. today, while a 48-hour deadline expires on Iran. He is signing defense agreements while 11 F-22s sit on Israeli tarmac. He is formalizing a security partnership while Turkey plans border incursions and China sells Iran supersonic anti-ship missiles. Netanyahu is assembling his coalition before the action, not after. Every alliance signature collected before the first bomb falls becomes a diplomatic asset that cannot be retracted once the operation begins. India cannot condemn an Israeli military action 48 hours after its prime minister stood in the Knesset endorsing the security partnership that enables it. Modi did not travel to Israel despite the crisis. The crisis is why the invitation was sent. So if you think about India's most persistent and relevant danger, it is Pakistan. They have been at Pakistan's throat and vice versa from day one. Ever since the trinity of Gandhi and the two other guys, I forget their names now, who were vital and important to India's independence, right? Once India became independent, I forget the name of the guy who was the Muslim, but he broke off and he said, "We're doing Pakistan. We're going full Muslim, full Pakistan. We're going to have our own state." And the years that ensued, and even the quest for independence, was absolutely bloody, brutal, like a civil war unlike others. I mean, it's probably going a bit of a bridge too far, perhaps, but these were two religions and cultures which really despised each other. And coming out of they come out of the victory against the British. So each side believes they have the momentum to impose its will upon the state. Anyway, they've been at each other's throats since then. And, a little over a year and a half ago, it looked like they were going to war again. So they want India's full backing. India will not condemn what happens between Israel and Iran. But not only that, if what looks like is taking place on the surface is a regional war against Islam, that means that the Pakistanis will be drawn into it. And Israel needs to be, remember, the Pakistanis, they have nuclear weapons theoretically. How they got them, I guess maybe it was a relation with Russia. I don't know. But they will need India to fend off any threats from Pakistan if they go into a hardcore war against greater Islam. Now, this is problematic from a strategic standpoint. And it's because Trump and Jared Kushner went through there and did these Abraham Accords. And what they did is they went to all these various countries like the UAE and Qatar and Saudi Arabia, and they basically paid them money. They gave them money so that they would essentially support Israel over Palestine. That was the deal. That was really the nuts and bolts of the Abraham Accords. They went and paid them off. And so once these countries got the money and were not either diplomatically, economically, or ideologically tied to Palestine, Gaza, that's when Israel went all in. Make no mistake, October 7th was a byproduct of Jared Kushner and the United States buying off almost all of the Muslim allies to Palestine and Gaza. They were kind of left to hang out to dry. Nobody was going to help them. The deals were in place. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens if Israel then decides to push into these other areas that have Salafist, Wahhabist, governmental or theocratic structures / influence. That would include Iran. That would include Lebanon. Jordan is weird. Jordan has always had ties to Israel. They're never really a threat. So it'd be Lebanon. It would be Iran, and more than likely Egypt as well. I don't think Egypt. I don't know if. Let me see if Egypt signed the Camp David Accords. Let me just check. If they did, then they won't do anything. However, it does place those countries sign the Abraham Accords, not Camp David. No, Egypt did not sign the 2020 Abraham Accords. Okay. Let's see. Let's see who signed the Abraham Accords. All right. So the countries that signed the Abraham Accords are, of course, Israel, United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, Morocco, and Sudan. That means that Saudi Arabia, Qatar did not sign the Abraham Accords. Neither did Egypt. Neither did Iran, obviously. Interesting. So out of all of them, probably the most important is probably the UAE. So those countries theoretically are now allies of Israel. Now, maybe not in the same way that Egypt is, but those countries are. And what's interesting is that, let's see, they signed them in September 15th, 2020. And they were trying to get Syria, Lebanon, and Saudi Arabia aboard. And then Kazakhstan was supposed to be part of it. But that did not happen. Oh, in 2026, Kazakhstan formalized its entry into the Abraham Accords. So there you go. Somaliland is now part of the Abraham Accords. Morocco, Sudan, those are interesting. The UAE, of course, Bahrain, but no Saudi Arabia. Interesting. No Jordan, no Syria. So you have to wonder, out of all those countries who did not sign those agreements, how many of them would be on tap to be in a conflict in the Middle East. And India did not sign the Abraham Accords, but they just signed a really significant agreement. So essentially what Netanyahu's doing is he's putting together a strategic coalition that, number one, backs him diplomatically on the world stage, and number two, can be a military partner if need to be called in on. So the clock is ticking. I think it's only a matter of time. You know, when Saturn hits 6 degrees Aries, that's when you really want to pay attention to Iran. So I have the chart out. This is for the 28th. So let me bring that up. We'll talk a little astrology here, shift some gears. So here's Saturn on the 28th. Saturn's at 1 degree. And it doesn't get up to like 6 degrees until what? May, 4 degrees, like sometime in the middle of March or end of March. So this is what the alignment looks like from an astrological perspective. You won't see Mars. Mars is behind the sun. And that's a really interesting concept in and of itself, right? Like if you just think about the Modi Netanyahu visit, that's a very Mars behind the sun scene, isn't it? It's like, it's not being illuminated. Mars is operating in darkness. And in Aquarius, it's technological. And Mars is almost always about action, the application of will, dominance, sex, violence, right? That's the nature of Mars, movement, energy. So this is all happening in an occulted position, right? It's behind the sun. So when we look at the planets, and this is not including the moon, right? We're looking at the sun, Mercury, which is now retrograde, Venus, Neptune, Saturn, Uranus, and Jupiter. So they're kind of all on a string. And you can see them. Let's share this tab. So these are the dates and times where you might be able to see them. The best window starts about 30 minutes after local sunset. Your approximate start looking times. Now, again, this is dependent upon if we have a clear sky. But if you're in New York, about 6:15, Washington, D.C., about 6:29, Chicago, about 6:09, Dallas, about 6:53, Denver at 6:20, Phoenix 6:54, LA 6:18, Seattle 6:22, London 6:10 p.m., and Manchester 6:16 p.m. And again, theoretically, this is what it would look like. So if we go back to our astrological chart, we would start off with Mercury, Venus, and then it would be Neptune, Saturn, and then Uranus, Jupiter. There's your alignment right there. And they're all at sort of these inner planets, Mercury and Venus, particularly Venus, are at the outer degree of the sign, right? Outer degree. And then we have Neptune and Saturn, and they're on the inner degree. And then Uranus is on the outer degree and Jupiter is on there. What do I mean by that? Well, I'll show you. So Uranus is at 27. Neptune and Saturn are at 1. Venus is at 20. Is that 25? Venus is at 23. Mercury's at 20. So what I mean by outer, it's those outer degrees. So we have outer degrees, outer degree, and inner, meaning that they're much closer to zero. But because they're closer to zero, they're much closer to the outer. Do you understand what I'm saying? The only one that isn't, it's just off the tilt of the alignment a little bit, is Jupiter. which is at 15. So we have 27, we have 23, we have 21. The sun doesn't count, right? We have 1, 1. If you wanted to throw Chiron in there, we could throw Chiron in there too at 24. And then Jupiter. So it looks like this. Right? There's Mercury, there's Venus, there's Saturn, there's Neptune, there's Uranus, and then here's Jupiter, sort of off tilt, right? A little bit off tilt. But you'd be able to see them all, right? And what's weird is that Mercury a lot of times isn't visible. So you'll be able to see Mercury, which is very unusual. Venus is visible, Saturn, Jupiter, and Uranus, Neptune. And it's going to be bright. This is what's interesting. Very, very interesting. So it's the first hour after local sunset, because Mercury is time sensitive. You don't get to see. This is really unusual. So if you're a stargazer, check this out. If just due to the fact that Mercury is going to be visible, because usually it's not. So what does it mean? Tell us, Robert. What does this all mean? Well, usually what happens is that when there's an aggregation of planets that are aligned in for the most part, a perpendicular fashion, even though we saw the Jupiter slightly off, there's this idea that there is energy, the energy field from one planet to the next is passed along, right? So we'll use Jupiter as kind of a starter. Jupiter being retrograde. And one of the things that I think Jupiter retrograde does is it brings up people's insecurities. I mean, if you knew on some level that we were living on the precipice of a major war, how would that make you feel? I guess if you were right with Jesus and you were ascribed to that personal belief system, you'd be fine. You'd be like, I'm okay no matter what happens. I know I'm saved. I know that my place is in heaven with the Lord. I have nothing to fear. And maybe that's the best position to have anyway. But for most people who don't have that unshakable rock-like faith, they get freaked out. They worry about their kids. They worry about their loved ones. They worry about their bank accounts. They worry about their food supply. They worry about all kinds of things. And Jupiter retrograde in Cancer, there's a big worry energy. Now, I will throw in a little slice of hope here. And I'm not saying that this alignment is a potentially catastrophic or apocalyptic event. We get alignments all the time. Okay. But I'll throw in a little slice of what I would call hope, which is never a strategy. But Jupiter retrograde in Cancer can act as a reminder of things that we, as a collective group, as a species, as humanity, things that we have done in the past that have not served us. Because Cancer is all about memory. And Jupiter retrograde would be, hey, Remember when the world went to war and it wasn't such a great thing? Do you remember that? There are some people around that still actually remember those things. And maybe perhaps this Jupiter retrograde is a bit of an injection of sanity, which is cautionary but not fear-based. There certainly is a desire to return to a different time with Jupiter retrograde. Now that's going to change on the 11th of March. Jupiter's going to go direct, but there is a desire to return to a different time, a better time, a more simple time, a time where neighbors said hello and the paper was delivered by a guy on a one-speed bicycle with 2 bags hanging off the rack in the back, hopefully trying to get it as close to the porch as possible. That was our thing. If you could porch it while riding, you were considered a good paper boy. And if you didn't and it wound up in bushes, you had to get off your fucking bike, which was unstable already because you just couldn't put the kickstand down. You had to kind of lay it down so all the papers would stay in the bags. Go walk over, take it out of the bushes and put it on the porch. Because that would reflect in a tip. If you collected the money, which you had to do, if you porched the paper, people would tip you. That's how it worked. All right, but then the energy goes to Uranus, again, theoretically, even though Jupiter's on a wing. And Uranus is like a linear accelerator, right? What does it do? It amplifies it. It amplifies the energy. It brings discord. It brings high strange. And it doesn't always operate according to plan. God bless Uranus. So there's a very interesting transformation of the energy between Jupiter and Uranus. Then we'll take Chiron out of the picture for a moment. We'll go to Saturn, Neptune. This is the big kahuna, right? The big kahuna. These are the war gods right now. And things could, we'll go back Jupiter, Cancer retrograde. There could also be a real misinterpretation of ideas and strategies with Jupiter retrograde. And the Saturn piece could complicate that even more. I'll give you an example. Prior to Pearl Harbor, there were some guys that decoded that the Japanese were going to attack Pearl Harbor, 2 or 3 days in advance. And they ran it up the chain of command, who ran it over to Roosevelt. And they did nothing. They just let it happen. Because they knew that if they had moved all those ships out of harm's way, they wouldn't have had a war in their hands. That's kind of a Jupiter retrograde moment. Let me just check something here. Let me just see something. I haven't planned on this. There's an actual chart for Pearl Harbor. Look at that. Look at that. Your boy was right. Jupiter was retrograde. Gemini, communication. And then the next planet over, Uranus. Oh, in Taurus too. 27 degrees. What degree is that Taurus now? 27 degrees. Look at that. Saturn and Taurus, Mars and Aries, man, they're itching for war. Totally itching for war. But that's it right there. You see that Jupiter retrograde? That I knew it. I knew it. I didn't know it. I'd never seen this chart before. But you could just fucking tell that communication ahead of time, Gemini, didn't go anywhere. Well, it went places, but ultimately over here, Mercury is like, fuck that, we're going to war. And Jupiter's amplifying Mars and Aries. Look at that. Almost like the US chart. Not quite, but close. Very close. So here we go again. There's that Jupiter retrograde. There's that Uranus, same degree of Taurus. 27 degrees. What's communicated, more than what's communicated, Gemini's communication. This has to do with the ocean. This has to do with like something happening at sea that can be averted. It can be totally averted. Like somebody knows not to take a certain channel or not to take a certain lane, right? And they run it up the flagpole and they say, it's okay, go ahead. We have the green light. And you don't have the green light. And it's considered a maritime violation. That's what this feels like. Because it's got the same kind of Jupiter retrograde, Pearl Harbor-y thing going on, but different. This, to me, this is like shipping, cargo. This is naval. This is naval stuff. And then there's that Uranus. And it's something happens with the communication or the instruction or the direction. And then here we go, gods of war right here. And then the next stop is Venus, Mercury. Mercury retrograde, complete misinterpretation. And this is at a global scale. And I hope it doesn't happen. What, we were one day away? I hope it doesn't happen. I don't want the world to go to war. We'd be better off without it. But by the time it gets to Saturn, Neptune, right, they're so close together that there's almost any, this is like a hair trigger. There are some guns that the triggers are so light, right? You just barely touch it and it goes off, right? That's the Saturn-Neptune conjunction. It is a hair fucking trigger. Now, if we want to bring this and boil this down into a personal perspective, people have the hair trigger. People are wired to go off. And I would say that this is very touchy energy. Very touchy energy. And there's a lot of misinterpretation of communication with Mercury retrograde in Pisces. Let me get into this Mercury retrograde a little bit. Especially because of Jupiter. And Mercury is now in trine with Jupiter, and they're both retrograde. The past is going to be a very big deal. A very big deal. And quite emotional. Very emotional. So be prepared. Be prepared to deal with a lot of heavy family shit. The ghosts of familial past are being raised. And there's a lot of emotion and a lot of catharsis that is in the air. This Mercury retrograde is huge. All these, I talked about this before, these Piscean planets are huge because it's about purification. We're kind of in the sweat lodge right now. And if you've ever been in a sweat lodge, it's nothing like a sauna. Sauna, you can get out anytime you want. Plus, there's usually lights on. I'll never forget the first time I was in a sweat lodge. It fucking triggered me hardcore. It was in the winter of 1980, late fall 1984. And I was in Massachusetts, and it was this legit sweat lodge. It was being run by this guy named Charlie Tom, who was, I believe, a Yurok Indian from the Mount Shasta area. Charlie was kind of a celebrity on the sweat lodge circuit. He was always known for his hot lodges. And I didn't know any of this. I was hanging out with this community and like, oh, it's sweat lodge day. Let's go. So I'm pretty tall, right? I'm 6'3". Thank God I was a little more flexible then. And this sweat lodge was packed. Packed. And I don't like being in cramped places. And then you throw in the heat in a cramped place, and then everybody's emotions, right? They're all floating around in there. Everybody's shit is coming up and being sweated out. And I remember they closed the flap. Here we go. Like within 10 minutes, I'm like, get me the fuck out of here. But you couldn't do it. Could not do it. Physically impossible to step across all these bodies. I was locked in. I was in the very back part of this thing. I was 180 degrees away from the entrance. And it got hotter and hotter and hotter. And then I put my head down because you can get a little bit cooler. Came back up again because I couldn't keep it down there forever. I couldn't bend that much. And I got through it. And then, of course, you did the cold water. It was great. And I'm like, fuck it. I'm doing it again. Now that I got past that part, I can do it. And ever since then, from that point forward, I had no problem with sweat lodges. But they're not always like these, sort of Swedish therapeutic exercises. I mean, they're singing and praying and people are crying. Like, there's shit going on. And it feels like we're in a bit of a sweat lodge, especially with Saturn, Neptune, and Aries. It's hot. Right? And the closer Venus gets, 27, 28 degrees, the closer we get to the heat of the sweat lodge, the longer we're in there. And so finally they open the flap and you say, thank God. And then you get to hit the cold water, which is an absolute, it's cold, but it's a relief. It actually feels really good. So we're in the sweat box. We're in the sweat lodge right now. And the purifications, it's a time of purification. Neptune, the ruler of Pisces, rules poisons, toxins. So this would be a really, really good time for you to detox. And you can detox in any number of ways. Sometimes the detox is related to impurities in your body. Sometimes it's related to people in your life. Sometimes it's related to the media that you watch. and consume. Sometimes you're detoxing from your own habitual participation in the slavish patterns of your own life. And you need to break those up. Because once these planets move into Aries, it is all go. All go. We're talking Venus, Mercury, Sun, Mars. There's that time, what is it, in April, where they're all showing up in Aries. You better be ready to go then. If you're still dealing with lingering emotional issues, toxins in your life or in your body, by the time we hit April, you're going to have issues. We'll all have issues if we can't. This is a really, really interesting time. Really interesting time. And the Mercury retrograde is a facilitator for that. You're going to have moments where your past is going to come back to you, and it will be emotional. Let it go. Let it out. Just let it go. Make amends where you can. And in some instances, you've probably done as much as you already can. So try to stay sympathetic to the other person's cause. There is not a lot of outward and dynamic energy right now. I talked about Mars. Mars is the most outward and dynamic planet, but it's behind the sun. It's occulted. Accessing Mars is not easy. And if you do access Mars in Aquarius, you're probably hanging out in a dungeon somewhere with somebody doing very Mars and Aquarius-like things that happen in very dark parts of our society, if you know what I mean. If that's your trip, hey, that's fine. As long as it's two consenting adults. Let me give you one more other thing to talk about or think about here. There are a lot of these Epstein people that are falling like dominoes. Like the latest one is, see if I can find it. I brought it up here. Where is this guy? Let me see. I just had him up here. His name Berg. Here it is, right here. Let me bring this up. This guy was all over the Epstein files. World Economic. He was like the head of the World Economic Forum. Borg Brand. This is the guy that was supposed to step in. Look at that smug bastard. He was supposed to step in and take over for Schwab, Klaus Schwab, right? He had to quit. Not only is in the Epstein files, but some of his Epstein file stuff is pretty dank. So we can see this astrologically, right? This is part of the purification process. And it's also that Mars and Aquarius behind the sun. It's all that weird, dark, creepy activity that's occulted. That's what we're seeing. And there's a bunch of people. Let me see. I got a list here. Prince Andrew arrested, Peter Mandelson arrested, Thorbjørn Jagland charged, Larry Summers banned, Thomas Pritzker resigned, Kathy Rumler resigned. Brad Karp resigned. George Mitchell resigned. Sultan Ahmad bin Sulayam replaced. Casey Wasserman, selling company. Peter Attia fired. Sarah Ferguson shut down. Mana Jewel resigned. Miroslav Lajic resigned. Jack Lang investigated. Mohammed Wahid Hassan resigned. David A. Ross resigned. And now we have this guy. Borg Brend. He's done. The only thing I'm having a problem with is that the last time I heard, they had shut down the access to the Epstein files. Let me see if that still happened. U.S. begins evacuating some embassy staff in Israel. Here we go. Massive explosions just reported in Iran. All right. Here we go. Let's see what we got. Let me share this.
FARcast. FARcast.
So it was just the explosion here. Let's do one more time.
FARcast.
These look like emergency lights of some sort.
FARcast.
Locals are speculating that air defense systems may be being targeted in position to sites of these explosions,
FARcast.
including Parshin and Iranian military. All right, there we go. It's hard to get a sense of what's happening with that video clip, but that's quite possible. There's something else I'm looking for here. Let me just do this. Hold on. We're almost done here today, FYI. Yeah, I had read that they had shut down access to the Epstein files to the public, and I was trying to follow up on that. And I don't see anything. Okay. So I'm going to have to go back and revisit that. Anyway, they're dropping like flies, which is how, in a lot of ways, it was intended to do. You know, Pluto and Aquarius. tripping across Epstein's sun astrologically. What's been occulted and hidden, it becomes illuminated. And when the head of the World Economic Forum steps down, like sometimes some of these things are cosmetic, but sometimes they have far-reaching consequences. Like that guy, Borg Brend, can never be seen again at a World Economic Forum event. Now, he may chime in on a Zoom call or some kind of encrypted service that they use that the rest of us don't have any connection to. And that's quite possible, especially if it's untrackable. But his name is off the letterhead. He doesn't get the perks and the pleasures of being the head of the World Economic Forum anymore. And I think ultimately that's a good thing. Also, in his private life, the guy's got a scarlet letter, and he won't be able to just hang around and be a casual citizen anymore. Not that he was ever a casual citizen anyway, but life in public just got a lot harder for Mr. Borg Brand. Just like all these people, life in public just got imminently harder for them. And I'm just waiting for when the hammer drops on Howard Lutnick. If it does, because this guy's all over the Epstein files. And Trump doesn't go anywhere without Howard Lutnick. They're joined at the hip. If I was Trump, I'd tell him, I'd pull Howard Lutnick aside and say, hey, man, you got to resign. You got to step down. If not, I'm going to have to let you go. And they'll go, oh, but Donnie, we have this. You can't do that. Oh, you're right. You're right. Okay. I'll be out of here in a few months. JD will take care of you. All right. That's it for now. Thanks for being here. We'll pop up Friday FARcast. We covered a lot of ground today. We got in some astrology and we got in some geopolitical stuff. We mixed the geopolitical stuff with astrology. We had an interesting revelation about World War II and Jupiter retrograde and Pearl Harbor and Jupiter retrograde in Cancer and Uranus and Taurus at the same degree. So I hope that this was time well spent. Anyway, if you like the show, you know what to do. Hit the like. If you haven't subscribed, please do. It does theoretically help the numbers. And you can always buy yours truly a cup of coffee since I've been demonetized. And the QR code is right up there with Lord Jasper in the center. And there's also a link, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. Also, if you want to get a hold of me, there's a number you can call or text to me. And let's not forget our good friend Chris over at True Hemp Science, sponsor of the show. All you got to do is go there, spend $100 or more, type in 15MINS. You're going to get $10 off your first order anyway. So you may as well take advantage of it. I got to say, those Chris's goodies really were a lifesaver over the past couple of days. Just in terms of me being able to deal with a lot of this heavy duty Piscean tension in the air. All right. Take good care. We'll see you on Sunday night. We'll talk more about the upcoming eclipse and whatever else has happened between now and then. Much love to all of you. Chattaria, you're the best. Mods, thank you for your service. Bye for now.